This is the Public Art Advisory Committee, Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16th, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and the committee while allowing for public participation. The public may address the committee using exclusively remote public comment options. The committee may take action on any of the items listed on the agenda. To address the committee, you may use remote public comments. Meeting participants are encouraged to submit public comment in writing in advance of the meeting. However, they may also join the meeting or may email at aibera@brisbaneca.org, text 415-407-2675. And the public meeting may be viewed live by joining the Zoom meeting listed below. And let's go ahead and do roll call. Okay, Mayor Cunningham is absent at the moment.
She's no longer mayor.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Park and Rec Commissioner Greenlee.
Present.
Committee member Danette Davis.
Here.
Committee member Grossman. Beth.
You're muted. Muted.
Sorry, here.
Committee member Salmon.
Here.
All right. She still hasn't joined yet. Okay, let's presentation and discussion items. View the Public Art Fund.
So I just wanted to update everybody where we are on the public art activity on the fund. So through October 31st of 21, which is the last day that we accrued interest, but as you can see on this November 23rd, 21, we did receive $53,000 from 3260 Bayshore. We have $45,000 committed for rehabbing the mural at Midtown. We do actually, that will actually, to the best of my knowledge, be started within a week or two. We will have Kieran, who's a restorationist, start work on cleaning up and restoring as much as she can to the mural. And we are in touch with Mona to have her come at some point after Kieran does her work for her to do it. We are still trying to get specific dates from Mona, but she does know Kieran is working on it. We are in touch with her. So she is aware that this is something that we're doing sometime in this, starting in February, and would like to be done sometime in the spring. So given all of that, there is, after the commitment for the Midtown mural, there is $1,102,015.05 in the fund. So that's what we have to work with. I thought it would be, especially, as I said, I was going to bring this information to you quarterly, but I thought this would be important to bring to you today because you are going to be talking about potential projects in different areas of the city. So I was imagining you would want to see how much money was available.
Thank you, Stuart.
Welcome.
Thanks for following through on the mural. That's so important. Really appreciate it.
Yes, I mean, as you all know, trying to get Mona to respond and be committed is not the easiest thing, but I've got Kieran, Kieran is in touch with Harmon, who is the proprietor at Midtown. So they're working together. Kieran is working with Noreen Leak from our Parks and Recreation Department to make sure that we have everything that Kieran needs to do as much as she possibly can. And I'm hoping having Kieran be involved in it, since Mona recommended her, that will help motivate Mona to finish up, to come in and do what she will need to do the paint touch up. And then after Mona is done with the paint touch up, Kieran will come back and do a top coat to it. And the top coat will be UV, have a UV protection layer to it to help reduce, hopefully, the fading over time. So having somebody who does that professionally is very important for us.
That's great. I
quick
just want to make sure the
question.
money that's in here can also be used for consultancies.
Yes. The $1,100,000 is available for whatever the committee would want to recommend to the city council to be used for.
Thank you.
But obviously it would go to council for their approval at some point.
Stuart, do you know what's involved in the restoration of the mural at Midtown? Is that like a lengthy process?
So Kiernan is good. I think
What needs to happen?
Kiernan, I think, is going to be about 2 weeks because she's got to clean the mural. She's got to remove the top layer. She's going to do as much fix-up work to make it look better without having to do any of the repainting touch-up that she can. And then I think Mona has said that she's able to do it. She's looked at it. She doesn't think it'll take her that long to do it. But trying to tell, I cannot give you a day when Mona told me she will be able to do it, because as many times as I email Mona and I try and contact her and Kiernan lets her know what's going on, she is not the most responsive of people. And as Beth knows, part of it is because she's a very popular and very sought after artist. So I'm trying to be the best that I can, and just, she knows that we're doing it. She knows what's going on. She knows the time frame. I'm keeping her informed every step of the way, so that way she can work us into her calendar. But she says she's in the Bay Area through the spring, and that she doesn't think it'll take her more than 1 or 2 days when she actually gets to it. So
Well, that's good news. That's really good news. So thank you for staying on it and being, flexible.
Yes, but my impression is, like, when Kiernan is finished with her doing her cleanup for 2 weeks, you'll notice a marked improvement as to how it looks.
Well, the reason I was asking, because I don't know much about how much is involved, but to me, that I was just looking at the cost to refurbish that at $45,000. And I believe the mural costs somewhere in the 30s to install. So I'm just curious, also thinking about murals down in the future, like how much they cost to maintain. And so if a mural costs like $45,000, if it needs to be maintained, 15 years later, it may cost, $80,000, $90,000. So because this refurbished, I guarantee you, is more than the mural cost.
Yes.
I don't know
Yeah,
much
but that
about
was also
this.
numbers from a long time ago, though. That we have to assume, like, whatever. If we did a mural today and we had to touch it up 15 years later, you have to account for the inflation.
Well, I understand.
The other aspect is the type of wall it is. So touching up the mural on Midtown Market will be more expensive than touching up a mural at the skateboard park.
Because why?
Because you have to have the scissor lift available to be able to, or scaffolding to be able to, because of the height of it versus the height of at the skateboard park. So that's part of what the cost is for Kiernan. It's also, because of the size of it, it's a 2-week multi-person project.
I also think it's just important, and I think that it's important that Danette brings that up, so that when we do other projects that may be, whether it's mosaic, anything on the side of a building that will need maintenance, or any kind of artwork, that in that process, we make sure that we have an understanding of how we want to maintain it. I mean, I don't know if she'll use the whole 45,000 or it won't be or whatever, but I think it's important to remember what Danette said. I mean, what Madison said, which is things go up, people's prices go up, all of this. But I think the bottom line is to remember that when we're doing a public art piece, that we begin to consider what the upkeep and the maintenance of those things are, so that we're aware of it.
Beth?
Agree on all of that. And also a lot of it depends on the integrity of the building, the facade itself, and how old the cement or whatever shape it's in when they put the mural up. So that's something that we really need to make sure that we put in some kind of guidelines. The other thing was that I visited Watsonville last weekend, and I met with people that are on the Arts Commission there, and they directed me to a project that's going on where they're doing mosaic murals, because they tend to last longer. And I took pictures of the whole thing, which I can send to somebody if you'd like. They're beautiful. But secondly, the other thing that I was really inspired by was they had a temporary mural project on the City Hall, and they had built these brackets where they could put in the large pieces of plywood, and the murals would stay up for about a year on different themes, and they would commission artists to paint them, and then they could be either kept in, the artists could take them, or they could be archived, or they could just buy a new piece of plywood and put it in the frame, so that every year there was changing murals, and also giving lots of opportunities to artists, and also avoiding the upkeep, which is why I bring it up.
Right. That's interesting that you say that, but because we kind of got off subject. We kind of moved somewhere else. But I think it's important, but I think it's also important about where those things go. And I think that's a discussion, because I do like the fact that things change, but do they for another time in the temporary art aspect?
Mhm.
All right, are there any more questions about the fund activity, or should we move to item B, review the city's property and possible art locations? You ready?
Ready.
All right, Stuart, do you want to kick us off, or do you want me to pull up the map? I think we're kind of familiar with the 3 spots we had initially
I was
talked
gonna
about.
say. So, right, so what I have done for the committee was put together a potential framework for thinking about different art projects. I pulled this from looking at a number of different cities who have done public art, and what they were, what they were thinking about when they were doing the public art, and what kinds of conversations they thought were important for public art. I also have provided the committee today a public art guidelines from Tacoma to talk about, what are the, some of the ideas behind public art, to try and, as you have asked for, to have just a general conversation about what you're thinking of for public art, and what, and what you want to do for each of our locations. And the idea that each of the locations may have different types of art, different types of values that you want to bring forward, a different group of people who you may be trying to reach with them. So I was just trying to give you as much of an ability to have a broad-based conversation as I could, and give you some kind of format that has seemed to work in other communities. So, I think with that, we could get started with the first location, which is, what we had talked about at the last meeting, or what you talked about at the last meeting, was that the 3 locations that you want to talk about first are Visitation Avenue, the walkways in town, and the area behind the restroom in the community park. But what you had also asked for was a listing of other locations that we can do. So I try to have that list here for you. And if there's other places that you think that we can add to the list, let us know, and we will add to this list. And we can just keep this as a running thought bank for the committee going forward. So with that, I would imagine that you might want to start talking about Visitation Avenue, and I don't know if you want to start talking about what kinds of that, what are the community values you want to bring there, or who you want the art aimed at, because it seems like those are the 2 types of things that are, before you start talking specifics, what you might want to.
Stuart, I don't know, you guys, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if as a committee, we decided which location we wanted to begin our first investigation. If I'm
No,
not
I think what you talked about was the top 3 were the
Yes,
3 you
that's what I'm
wanted
saying.
to.
Right,
And
so, but I
if
don't
you
know
wanna
if we
pick one
made
of the
a
others, that's fine too.
decision on the
Yeah.
first three is my point. That's what I'm saying.
I
So-
was just looking at, sorry, I apologize.
I'm
Camille.
sorry, yeah, I'm not, yeah, I'm just saying, I think the first step for me anyway, would be for us to discuss, knowing the three locations we have, which one do we want to, saddle and
Okay.
explore? Does that make
I-
sense?
It does. I was thinking that you might want to talk about all three locations
Oh,
first.
okay, that would
And
work for
then
me
after
as
you get
well.
the three locations, you decide what values you want in the three locations, who you're trying to reach in the three locations,
Ah.
and the types of work you want in the three locations. You can then decide out of those three, which one you wanted to tackle first.
That's fine with me as well. Thank you for the
So that way
clarification.
you're not stuck on any one, because if you say, okay, we want to do the area behind the park, and then somebody says, oh, I have a great idea about visitation, at least all three would be out on the table first.
Okay,
And then as a committee, you could decide. That was my thinking. But I am open to whatever the committee wants.
I'm fine with what your thinking is. I would like to hear from what others, but I'm fine with that.
We
Informa-
discussed capital projects at the last council meeting, and funds are pretty tight, so I don't think we're quite yet moving forward with some of the walkways, and there's talk of creation of like new walkways. But I think that we could, if walkways was still of interest, we could probably tackle one that already exists.
So wait, I'm sorry. I don't
I
mean,
see
I'm
Lisa's
Lisa,
hand.
I'm sorry. Go, Lisa.
Oh, that's okay. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I was thinking with the walkways, being on Park and Rec, we've talked about the walkways, and and they definitely need some maintenance. They need some work on their lighting, and they need some work on their surfacing, on their railing. I'm just talking about physical things that need work. And when you think about those physical things that need work, I think these are opportunities to inject art into the facility of the walkways. So let's not just think about the steps themselves, but maybe think about the benches attached to the steps and those areas where you might want to stop and rest. Maybe you want to talk about the lighting. Lighting can be very creative. We could get some really cool lighting artists to do something that really surprises you as you walk up those steps. And also the railing could be very interesting. Right now we have like some kind of old aluminum pipes that I think look very pedestrian. So those are some areas. I just think I think those areas are areas of discovery. They're wonderful little hidden paths through town that like only locals know about. And if they become surprising and interesting with art, and at the same time upgrade the facility itself as far as fixing the lighting, fixing the steps, fixing all that, and making it artistic, I think this is a really rich area. I would like to just give the blank canvas of these ideas to a reputable artist who will come in and give their ideas of what they see applied to this space. Because I don't want to personally come up with the idea. I think that's the artist's job, but I think it's a ripe canvas for doing some both maintenance and art.
And I think that's like a perfect way to use this money, because we're using this money for art, but it's also solving a problem. Like, I think that these areas really, they lack, like you said, they lack maintenance, they lack lighting. And so to have art not only make them exciting and interesting and I think it inspires people to want to get out and walk and exercise. But then also fixing this critical problem that we've been having is making them, safe in the evenings. I think that is a really brilliant way to use art to not just make a space feel really interesting and exciting, but, to kind of fix some problems that exist.
So it seems to me that when we're looking at the walkways, we're looking at an actual collaborative effort. Not only a collaborative effort with Parks and Recs, but the city as well in terms of their facilities, their budgeting, as well as us as a committee for artists. So I think which is great. Collaboration is the best way to go forward. But what I'd like to hear, I guess, is in terms of a timeline. Can we work? I'm fine with this. Do we do 2 projects at the same time to make sure that we don't lose an open door on the walkways? Or what is the timeline with the city on setting this budget? And what is the city's anticipation and expectations of input on this project?
Now, I think the question is that, as Madison said, the city council looked at the capital improvement projects, that there is not money to do capital improvement projects at this time. So if the Public Art Committee says that they would like to take on the railway or the lighting as a public art project, that would be outside of the CIP process. And the Public Art Committee would make a recommendation to the city council saying, here's what our recommendation is for this, for the railway, for the railing, or for the lights, or for the stairway. And that would become outside of the capital improvement process because it's not part of that. I need to, obviously, if you're going to do something with lighting or railing or the walk itself, is incorporate Public Works into that to make sure that it meets the standards that Public Works has for our walkways. But
So are you
just be
saying,
part of the
in other
process.
words, when we hear that because I'm kind of slow, please help me. If we as a committee took this on and it's not on the Public Works or the city's agenda for capital improvements, if as a committee we said, we would like to really look at the walkways, our commission would have to fund the building, the lights, all of that, as opposed to having a collaboration with the city where they're saying, we're giving you the people to dig the ditch,
Well, the Public Arts Committee is the city.
Right. But I'm just saying in terms, I'm sorry, let me be clear. In terms of money.
Right. So
funds.
if you're saying that you want to turn the walkway into a public art project, then the money would come out of public art. The city council has already made the determination that there is no money within other funds to do any improvements on the walkways.
So in other words, the thing is that there's no city money to help support the endeavor of the Arts Commission.
There is no other city money other than the Public Art Fund at this moment in time. What you could do is, I see Karen has her hand up and Nanette has her hand up. What you could do is say that the Public Art Committee would like to work on this project, that we have set aside 100,000, 200,000, whatever that dollar amount is of the 1.1 million you have available to do that. We would like to take on making the railways an art piece. We'd like to take on making the lighting an art piece. We'd like to take on doing whatever is an art piece. If the city council's, if the Public Works says, okay, in order to do that, here's what the projected cost of that is, and it's more than the 200,000 or whatever that dollar amount you want to put towards it, then it would go back to the city council, and the city council would have to make that priority, determine if that's a high enough priority with all the other issues that are going on in the city. I mean, the challenge at the moment with the city is that we are still dealing from the after effects of COVID. I mean, our TOT is still less than half of what we would anticipate in a non-COVID year. Our sales tax are down because we've had 2 major sales tax providers leave us. And that's why they're having their challenge with trying to do capital projects. I see, how about if we do Karen, Danette, and then back to you, Camille, only to try and allow everybody to speak.
Thank you.
I just want to throw this in that, there's only a couple of times a year that the city council gets together to talk about the budget, and we go through the budget and we say, here's the most important places to spend our money. And basically safety ends up first on that list. And there's been a lot of deferred safety projects over the years. And so when we come, you know, if the Public Art Committee finds an expensive project, until there's plenty of money in the coffers, it's going to be hard to take that over a safety issue, Camille. I just wanted to kind of let you know, it's not like they would just say, oh, no, we don't want to do it.
No. I'm taking all this in light of the 3 possible projects that we're looking at. I'm just saying this is an element to know that when we're looking at 3 possible places, to know that the walkways might end up being all in our boat, you know, so to speak, cost wise, or maybe it's something that we put off till later until we can collaborate and work together with the city to defer cost. That's
well,
all.
and it also depends whether any of these walkways have already been identified as a safety issue, which they might have been. So, you know, that's a consideration to think about, is like, maybe Stuart, if you can say, here are the walkways that have already been identified as safety issues. So there's money already allocated or thought we're going to look for money for that project. So if maybe you could identify that, Stuart, that would be helpful.
Well, the
So
city
it's like,
council,
you know, if we identify an art project that has a safety element attached to it, it's much more likely to move forward quicker than not.
right,
like-
I see Madison
like
has her hand up, though. Let me respond to Karen first. The city council at their last meeting on the CIP did not allocate any money towards any
Right.
capital projects, including the walkways. So there is no capital project in capital improvement money that the city council has allocated to anything. And I think we were going to go, great. Well, I think we're going to go Danette, and I see Madison has her hand up. So how if we do Danette, then Madison?
Well, I think the walkways are a great idea, but I am also concerned because so many of them, I think, are not safe, and I haven't walked a lot of them. So I don't know what the current status is, but I'm not in favor of our funds being used to rebuild stairs when I think that should be a capital improvement. I think it should be in collaboration when there is money that we can work into the design. So that I'm all for, but for us to like do the infrastructure and actually out of our budget to make it safe when, I mean, some of them are just very precarious. So my question is this something we still work on? We identify one and we work on, and when the funds are there, then you go ahead, or you just put it in the, I don't know how to proceed on this particular site that we're talking about now. How do you just put that on the shelf and go on to a different one? And when something is in the budget, is that supposed to be done that year? Because we worked on the skate park mural, it felt like for 2 years and we didn't even get anywhere. So if something is in a budget to do a capital improvement, and then we start working on the design process, the project may be ready, but the design, the artist part, like we're lagging behind. So how do we coordinate that with Public Works, with the city, when funds are available is my question.
Okay, so I'll get to that. Madison, do you want to speak first?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that if you want to do creative lighting, then that's the project. The city is not, you know, if the art is the lighting, then the money comes from the art fund. It doesn't make sense for any of that money to come from, you know, the city, because we're hiring a artist, a lighting artist. They know how to install, they know all that. So if you wanted to do railings, that comes from that. If you wanted to do a bench. So I don't think that the city would ever be involved in doing anything with the infrastructure of the stairs unless it was like the stair repair itself, like if there's cracks or something. Then at that point, the city would come in, repair the stairs, and then that canvas, if the art wanted to go on the stairs, then that's the time that becomes your canvas that's prepped and ready for you. But if you're wanting to fix the lighting, if the lighting is the art, then I don't think that it's a fair expectation to say, well, Public Works needs to come in and do all this stuff, because that's why you're hiring a lighting artist to do that. But the project that is there are like projects that we've discussed, building new stairways from scratch. And also repairing certain stairways that are dangerous. So if, for example, mosaics were something that we wanted to do there, then that's the infrastructure of the stairs itself. And I think that would be then the time that we would come in and we would do that type of project. But I don't think that you should let, the stairs being funky currently prevent you from putting a bench somewhere or putting lighting, because those are separate from the stairs themselves.
Camille?
I'm just gonna, because we're thinking of 3 places and I'd like to move on, I would just like to propose that I think my 2 cents anyway. I think that when we're talking about walkways that deal with infrastructure, or whether it's to repair or whatever, the best way to move forward would be in a collaborative way, understanding if it's on the timeline or whatever. Whatever that means. I don't know about infrastructure enough, but I think that for our discussion, what we should put out as a committee, is to say, we are eager to look at this, and we would like to look at this when the city is ready to see what they can do for safety, what's their guidelines for safety, what the needs are, how we can collaborate and work together to create an entire piece. Because I don't think it's about just getting someone to do lights or someone to do stairs. I think it's about looking at an artistic endeavor and creating something that's whole. So for me, I would like to propose that we continue to put the walkways, but move it back until we have an understanding of how we can collaborate with the city.
That makes sense. And I think the idea is that for the 3 projects that you identified first, is if you go through and say, what is it that we're trying to achieve in those 3 areas? Who are we trying to engage with the art? And then you start saying, okay, those are the 3 areas that we want. And then if something happens on the walkways, we know what we want to do. We can work with, Public Works, we can work with whoever to add that piece of art component to it. And also, you can also let council know that here's our top 3 priorities. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's who we're trying to get here's what our work plan is, and here's what we're trying to do. To respond to Danette's question as to how the money is allocated. So for something like the mural, you allocated money for the mural. It's coming out of the Public Art Fund. That money is in the Public Art Fund until the money is spent. So it doesn't go anywhere else. So if you spend so for the mural, I think it was that we paid $10,000 or $15,000 for the first phase of it. And we would have paid the other $10,000 or $15,000 for the second phase of it. Since that other phase was never done, that money stayed in the Public Art Fund, and it stays over as many years as it takes for a public art project to happen. It doesn't get budgeted in 1 year, and then if it doesn't get spent, it goes away. The money stays with the project until the project is finished. Does that make sense, Danette?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and just to clarify myself a little bit earlier, when I was making my comment, was that, yes, I mean, I agree with Camille. I feel like if we did a walkway, it should be a very holistic altogether, but I wouldn't want to do a walkway that has safety issues, the stairs are compromised, that are a problem, and then just throw a bench there, because I feel like the safe part needs to be handled, and whatever Public Works can do could impede where we've decided to put a bench. So I kind of feel like if we just about the walkway, if it's one we did, structurally it should be ready to go. And yes, I get that if we do put something like railing or lighting, that could possibly come out of the art fund if we wanted it to be artistic. So just to clarify a little bit, so it wasn't misconstrued.
So should we
I
talk
do
about
like Camille's idea.
I would just like to add
one
one other thing, if we could, is that if we could put on our agenda to let city council know or whatever, and if it's according to everyone else on the committee, to know that when it comes time for them to begin to investigate the cost and the needs for the walkway, that we are notified and included in what, and then that's the bell for us as a committee to begin to say, oh, this is what you have, this is what you're addressing, and then to move forward in a collaborative. Because I think
Right.
this is a great opportunity to be collaborative.
Lisa?
Yes, I agree with that, but I also think that creativity in looking at these projects can move a project forward. And it doesn't stop us from designing something or going into a design phase of how we might like, just like we did with the loop trail, is get kind of a design framework around maybe what we want to do and spend some money on just thinking about areas on the walkway that we could collaborate with, and spend a little money up front in the design phase so that we have a framework, and then we can kind of come to the city and say, look, we have these, these great ideas, wouldn't it be great to make this happen, and then work around. Anyways, I just don't.
Lisa, I agree with you. I just say, I think that in terms of our next steps, that we shouldn't drop it until, but I'm just saying, for our next steps, we should talk about that and let them know that, but I don't know if that's
Yeah.
where we need to move to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right,
think
so I
we're-
think that,
I think we're all assuming though that none of the walkways are safe enough for a project. And I think that that's like, let's say for the one from Humboldt to Sierra Point, right? Okay, well, the issue there is like lighting. That's the issue. The stairs seem sound, and or the issue might be like that it needs to be more regularly swept. That doesn't have really anything to do, that could be something that we could say, hey, we want to do this project, but can the city commit to cleaning this on a more regular schedule? So I think it might be smart for staff to look at some of we have a lot of walkways in town, and see if there's any that really are actually feasible for a project now. There's a small walkway between San Francisco and Solano. There's a teeny tiny walkway, a stairway. That one, there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with the safety of that staircase. So I think we're kind of all assuming that all of our staircases need a ton of work, and there might actually be some that could be ready to go with very little effort to prep them.
okay, so if you would like, we can break down the walkways into very specific walkways on our list. And we can do that for the next time, or for the next time we have this conversation. And the next step in all of this is that after the Public Art Committee determines what they want to do in those three areas, I would then write a staff report to present to the city council, to let the city council know, here's what this Public Art Committee has been working on. Here's what their work plan is for the next period of time. And then the city council can say, okay, all those are great ideas. And, and then you are part of the conversation when something happens. So it's, a very logical step-by-step process. But I think the first step in all of this is for the committee to come together and say, okay, here's what we're trying to achieve in each of the areas that we want to do some public art. And the reason I did the table the way I did is because you may want to achieve different things in different areas. And you may want to engage with different communities in different areas. I mean, if you may want to engage with certain people on the walkways, which may be different than what you're going to engage with when you're talking about something on Bayshore. And that's why I try to create a table that allows you to have the conversation about, what values do you want? Who are you trying to engage with? And then from there, you can then start talking about what kind of art you want. And then based on the type of art, you may then say, okay, in order to get that kind of art, we need this kind of a consultant to come in and help us through that process. Because the idea of having lighting art for, a walkway, or for, Quarry Road even, if that's the goal, if that's the type of art, then that's a very different type of artist than you would for a muralist. And you would say, okay, we need to have this type of an artist. And we can either say, okay, let's engage somebody to help us find an artist, or we can go out and just do a request for proposal, which has brought us very good artists in the past with lots of different ideas. And it's, I mean, and the challenge for me is that to me gets you where you want to be, and it gives you the ability to have the conversation, very creative conversations before you get to the point of having to make a decision. And what I heard from the committee was that you really wanted to have that free for all kind of conversation as to, what do we even want to start with? And I was trying to give you a framework to do that. Danette?
So if you do some research on the walkways, will you come back to us with the walkways that don't have any infrastructure problems, so that are good to go, that are not ones that need like capital improvement and that kind of thing, that are solid? And
I could ask Randy. Yeah, I would ask Randy which ones would he feel comfortable, that he doesn't need to put in money to, from a safety perspective. And I think he would say that most of our walkways that we currently have built are probably relatively safe, because otherwise we'd have them closed. They're not closed. So from that perspective, they are relatively safe. What we don't have is we don't have the walkway from Tulare down to Santa Clara. That's on the capital project list. We don't have the
photos? Can we get some photos of those also?
Sure, we can do that.
Maybe we could have homework to walk the walkways over the course of for our homework for like a month from now.
No, I was going to say the next meeting was going to be, the next meeting on this topic was going to be at least a month away.
And then we could actually have personal experience of all the walkways. There's also, I know that there's the Alvarado to Sierra Point or Sierra Point walkway, right? That one is like an atrocious one that I think is like a non-legitimized walkway that the city wants to put money into because it's like really to put money into because it's the ones that kids use all the time. So I know that's pretty high priority on the list.
But so now, I'm sorry, but so now I'm confused. I thought when this conversation started on the walkways that there was no city funding to pay attention to the walkways.
There isn't.
And now I'm hearing something else. Am I mixing?
It's just, it's high priority, but we don't have the money.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm saying.
When we do have the money, it's like really
That's a high priority. Okay, I was just confused.
We've gone out, there's also state funding and county funding, right? So like we can apply for projects and we can say, these are things that are really big safety issues. Will you give us a grant for 200,000 or 500,000? And so we're competing against all these other cities for funding, and a board will review and say, okay, these are the 3 projects we're gonna choose. And then all of a sudden we might have the funding for that.
That's why I go back to my original thing, is that I think that's why it's important in terms of the walkways, unless we want to piecemeal. But if we really want to do a collaborative effort that is with the city, with a consultant and various artists who come together and all collaborate, that these are the things that we need to know.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying,
sorry, relative to what you were just saying, I understand that confusion. I've applied 2 years in a row for bicycle and pedestrian access funding grants for that specific Alvarado walkway. And they're applying for it again this year. I don't know the status of it because I'm not involved this year, but we could suddenly have that money. It could be a county grant that comes through CCAG. So, fingers crossed all the time.
And I guess that's what I'm saying, is that when that comes, it would be great for us to know, saying, oh, this has come through, and the committee can decide if we want to collaborate and begin to understand our funding in regards to what that is.
Yep.
So that it's not after the fact, but it's all part of that process at the same time. That's all I'm saying.
Right, and I would agree. And I think if you can do that ahead of time, even before that happens, and say, here's what we want to have on these, and have that be presented to the city council, so the city council knows what the plan is, that will be easier to do. As opposed to saying that the grant came in and we've got to spend the grant quickly and then try and fit a piece of artwork to that. Which is why, again, I'm going to come back to the idea that you've said last time that you wanted to talk about 3 things. And what you told me you wanted to talk about those 3 things is, again, what are the values we want to do? And, you know, who do we want to engage? So I'll try one more time to have focus on, and I'm not saying that in any particular order, visitation, the walkways, and area behind the restroom. And you may want to put the walkways aside because you may want to have different things for different walkways, and we can bring that back to you. So at least today, if we can talk about Visitation Avenue and the area behind the restrooms in the community park in the next 30 minutes, which is all the time we have left now, that would be great. And I apologize for trying to drive this, but I know everybody wants to get something done.
I
And
agree.
that's-
Thank you.
So do you want to talk about what kinds of values you would see as being, what types of community values you'd want reflected on Visitation Avenue? And I just put that one first because I don't know why.
I think that like one of the things that drew me to the idea of visitation is really like investing in our only sort of downtown district. So I think is like creating like an atmosphere that feels like it's a thriving place where businesses and the community collide.
Okay.
So like a community kind of feel.
What I heard was the intersection between the community and between the residential and business community was one of the values that's what I heard from Madison. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth.
I think it's more like, you know, helping to create a thriving downtown,
Okay, so
thriving
creating.
Main Street. It's
Okay.
really the face. Visitation, I would say, is like one of the faces of Brisbane. It's one of the first impressions for so many people that are coming here. And so I think that art could unify or help give like a sense of place to visitation.
So you're saying you want it to look inviting? Because for me, and I would like this discussion while we're here. For me, yes, you want it to look inviting, you want to walk. It's not like we do have businesses, but I don't think people come into town for businesses. I think the community itself uses the downtown. I mean, maybe a few, but it's not like Burlingame Avenue. It's not like Hayes Valley. It's not that type of downtown. So I think I may be wrong, but it's like, what is the downtown? If you're going to look at community value, is the community value a place that something happens? I mean, whatever that may be, is there a place for people to sit? Or are you thinking people are just walking to go to have lunch and going back to the industrial park? Do you know what I mean? I mean, is it someone who's driving in? Who is it aimed at, I guess, you know?
I would say you've got a lot of different groups. But I'm thinking families, a lot of kids, school kids go up and down that street, family, kids, and then you have lunch crowd. The lunch crowd goes in and out. Those are ones I'm thinking I see on Visitation a lot.
But is the lunch crowd like ones that you want to really more, focus on to help maybe create that thriving downtown? Or does it want to be more like families and kids and finding little fun things around? I know Madison, I brought that up before. So, it's up to you guys on kind of what you want that to encompass.
I think it can be prettier. I think Visitation has always been has struggled to be inviting to outsiders or to families. And a lot of that is unfortunately, because a lot of it is privately owned and there's not much we can do about the privately owned space that's on Visitation. So what do we have that we can, anyways, I'm getting distracted. Go ahead.
Or one of the goals could be to try to like maybe just like with the walkways, where if they were interesting, inviting places, it would maybe encourage people to, you know, use them more often. And I think about that with Visitation too. Like if there was something that little things that you were noticing as you were walking, it might inspire you to want to get out of your car and walk Visitation more regularly, or inspire like a sense of, you know, people taking pride in their storefronts and wanting to maintain like outside their business, sweep, all those sort of things. Like initially when I had to kind of talked about an idea for Visitation, I had just gone to New York, and in one of the train stations, there was like these little statues, little gold statues of guys, small little guys, and there was like they were on the railings, like hanging off the railings. One was holding another one, or there would be like something on the ground that they were all lifting up and looking underneath, and you wouldn't notice unless you kind of were stopping and paying attention. And as you saw one, you started looking for others. And throughout this subway were all these tiny little like surprise sculptures, all telling like this story of these little statues who are kind of mischievous in the subway station. And that just inspired me to think of like, what sort of surprises could we maybe embed within Visitation that wouldn't take up a lot of space. Like maybe it's something on a light post, or and that would inspire people to maybe want to walk and look closer, and you know, find something exciting in the mundane.
Well, I like
Karen had her hand up. I'm sorry.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, so another group of people are the people who are not as physically able as others, including the elders, disabled and elders. And what the types of art I'm thinking relative to that, I've been thinking about it for a lot of different things, are maybe on Visitation we can have some very cool benches. And, you know, for me, benches everywhere around town is going to encourage more people to get out and walk, because if somebody has asthma or somebody has a disability, but I know 100 yards up the street there's another bench I can sit at, they're more likely to get out and walk around. And I mean, we could do all kinds of cool art benches, for goodness sake, on Visitation. Excuse me, I need to be quiet. Thank you.
I was just wondering, I don't know where we're at, but has anybody thought about what's overhead? And I mean, you know, I mean, the types of art, what is overhead? What is, you know, those new beautiful, have you guys seen the new art that's on Van Ness? Just, you know, with the new thing, which is interesting. So I think just to understand whether it's sculptural and it goes overhead, but I think that's, for me, I'd like to go through the others as well as quickly with just TID. Is that, I'm sorry.
No, I think that's a good idea.
I just wanted to say a couple things about Visitation Avenue, since I'm very much intimately involved with that street. And I will say that it's really the busiest Monday through Friday during the lunch hour. And it's pretty much dead on the weekends. So I just want to remind you that that's when the activity's there. And there's probably a fair amount of people in this town, which tells me, I mean, I know, because these are my customers, that they're the businesses around the area that are coming in for lunch. And if a business is a food establishment, they're pretty much open breakfast and lunch, and may not be after that necessarily. They've got to be open because that's their bread and butter. So it's really a combination of the people that are using visitation are residents, but they are people from the surrounding areas that work in the industrial park or in the marina, or they're contractors and they're here doing a capital improvement project. Because I'll get them and I'll get a work crew for a month or 2 months if they're working on something, and then they're gone, but I'll get another crew after that. So just to let you know, my personal experience over 20 years plus visitation, that's what I see. I'm there a lot, and some days it's busy and some days it's, which are usually the weekends, is just dead. It's like, where did everybody go? So.
Do you want to talk about the area behind the restrooms next?
Could I
Oh,
just,
that-
I just want to second what Karen said about the benches idea. I really like that, Karen. And also, it kind of makes me think of creating a sort of piazza sort of setting, and that whether it's people from town or people who are the lunch crowd coming in, everybody needs a place to sit outside and eat now. And so I think that it could be really fun what we could do with chairs. And I'm thinking of Puerto Vallarta has a series of sculptures that are also chairs. Mexico is kind of famous for doing that, so we could look to that for inspiration.
And I know that we were concerned a little bit of like, whether or not we could get businesses to invest in art or whatever, but there's always, the sidewalks, you can always do things in the sidewalks or paint them or anything like that too. There's a lot of interesting around the streets. Okay, you want to talk about the behind the restrooms?
The moment you say that, I just think Zen garden, and that's where my brain stops.
Well, part of me is also, yes, I agree with that. But also I think the thing about the restrooms behind the park is that, the sad part is that as a grandparent, you would always want to be able to sit in this beautiful little garden in the shade where that is and watch your grandkids play on the structure, right? But you can't, because there's a bathroom between you and that. So now giving that up, I'm thinking, why would you as an adult with, from that end, from grandchildren, want to have them investigate the other side? And there are many beautiful, whether it's a walk, whether it's a sculptural piece, whether it's an interactive, small kind of ongoing art piece project that people contribute to, what that is, whatever that might be, would be really interesting in ways to activate that area. It's just such a beautiful area.
So you're thinking like for who the art is aimed at is young children or families with young children.
Sorry, I think the place is aimed at relationships between generations, as well as contemplation, since you need words.
I would say there's also like people who use those picnic benches for parties on occasion back there. Like that is a picnic area. So I think that that is one type of crowd.
Yeah, I've seen that. And I've also seen, like you're saying, with the grandparents, but a lot of people with strollers where like the baby's resting or sleeping, it's not one that's climbing all over. It's like, a very, very small infant or baby, but it's still that outside air. And so the parent or grandparent is just sitting there kind of in that Zen garden or that, calm space as well.
And I also just point out, I know that we're asking who is this aimed at and everything else, but just to throw a wrench in the discussion is that sometimes art is for art's sake, period. And we should not forget that. I mean, we should make sure that we are open enough to say, whatever, if we got an amazing idea from an artist that said that would be there, that had kind of nothing to do with anything except that it was an amazing piece, we should remember art for art's sake.
Yes, I agree with that. I also really love water elements, and since it's right by the bathroom, it shouldn't be hard to get water to that space. I just think that it would be a beautiful, quiet, trickly water place. Just because we could do it there.
So I think the other community value would be calm or serenity might be one of the things we want to put down in the community value at the moment.
Mhm.
Beth? You're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I like the whole idea of having the water feature, the Zen garden, the calm, the sort of antithesis of what's going on the other side of the bathroom with all the kids, which is also fabulous. But I also just want to remind us that it's also, there's quite a bit of traffic that goes by there. So whatever we do, we might want to find a way to shield that either with trees or something. I'm not sure.
My question is, at what point do you call something landscaping versus art? Because I would say like a Zen garden would be landscaping. So, and I think that that's an area where you really see like where you could contemplate, where do you draw that line between landscaping and art?
Or maybe you don't.
You don't.
Right. Maybe you don't. I mean, when you go into the Japanese tea gardens in Golden Gate Park, there's some really weird and funky things that are in there. And it's like, is this art or is this the space? And it's kind of both. Don't you think?
I agree, Karen. I think that when we throw all of these things out, I know that we put walkways on the back burner for a while for clearer discussion. I think the next thing we're going to do is the fact that we all agreed as a committee to throw these ideas out and then bring in a consultant, an art consultant, who's going to begin to say, this is an idea, this is this person, here are the resources, and here's how I can help you manage resources. So that we're not designing at all. That's not at least that's what, I don't feel that's my job. I feel my job is to open the door to find resources so that as a committee, we can bring those resources in and get what the community wants in terms of an art piece.
This could be a perfect place for something like land or art, or this could be a place like there was a artist we had talked about that did stuff in San Francisco, like with rocks or with branches, and they're meant to only last like a year or two. And this could be like the perfect type of place where you have those kinds of elements, where there's something that is temporary because it's made of natural materials.
So that might be one of the community values is use of natural materials. Lisa?
Yeah, I'd like to just reinforce what Camille just said. I like the idea of giving a mood and a concept, and then handing that blank canvas to somebody who might have a real different vision of how to get there. Because I don't want to go in with a preconceived notion of landscaping, even water element, anything, but just say these are some elements that we would like explored, and then go and find the people who can take that football and run with it.
I agree.
I was gonna say, exactly what Madison said, that could also be an area where that could be your area where you rotate your temporary art. It may be an installation that was something previously from Burning Man or some other place, but that could in that location And in terms of who's the art aimed at, I think besides the park goers, it's people driving by. You know, that's probably one of the first pieces of art you'll probably see, unless we did a walkway, the one that's coming down from San Francisco Street to Old County Road. But it would be something that you would enjoy when you were driving by, or people that are using the village or cutting across the park to go to the village or catch the bus or something like that.
I think so, yeah. I think our thing is to begin to look for someone. Oh, first of all, we have to decide what we're paying attention to first. But, and then to put out someone, to begin to look for someone who can consult and curate our ideas. We're looking for a curator for this area if we decide that. But I also want to let you know, Danette, in terms, you mentioned Burning Man. This is not where that would work. They're too huge, just so you know.
Yeah, I don't know, I haven't been, but I've seen things in other parts of the city. Oh, that was from Burning Man. It's like, wow, that's impressive. But, you know, there are artists, I had articles, I brought them before, I don't know where they went, but there are artists that have pieces that they are stored in warehouses and they have nowhere to put them. And they, you know, that you can have them temporary for a certain amount of time. So I'm sure we can find something that's scalable.
I agree with that
So,
concept, yeah.
that's scalable to that particular area, of course. It's got the proportion has to be correct. It can't be like, you know, a 10-foot thing in that little tiny spot. It would be ridiculous.
If only Burning Man had 10-foot things.
That's
Could probably squeeze one of those though down at the marina. Like we have big open spaces down at the marina, and I bet you we could put something from Burning Man there.
Can we all now kind of, I'm sorry, because I know we're running out. Is there a way that we might want to either take a vote and decide on what we're going to pay attention to first, so that we can take the next steps and just honor and be responsible for our next step decisions?
Well, you know what, this conversation about the restrooms seems to have excited everybody. I'm kind of excited about it, and the idea of it's an easy thing to put on the table. I like this idea as something that doesn't have any constraints at this point. So I'd go for that. You asked a question, there it is.
Well, I kind of like the Visitation Avenue one. That got me kind of excited. So there you go.
Camille likes both. Camille, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was giving a note. I would prefer, my vote goes for the area behind the community park, so that we can begin to get our feet wet and understanding what it's like to work with a consultant in a smaller space and understanding what that process is. That's where my particular vote goes for at the moment.
Beth, you're
Beth.
off mute.
I agree with Camille. I think that sounds like a really good way to get started.
I would say of the two projects for me, Visitation is much more exciting, but I think that because of the way that our last project went, I see Visitation as like a really kind of a number of projects together, and it being probably a larger scale project. So I think that it could be valuable to have something smaller, so we understand the dynamic of working with the curator and doing something on that scale, learning best practices from that. And then I think being able to, we'll have the necessary education to then work on something larger like Visitation.
Okay. So what I could do is we can write this up. It seems like the next step would be then to try and talk about what kind of a person you would want to try and attract to help us with that process. And then after we get that is to go to the city council to let them know where you're at as a committee. And have them, the question is going to be is that we don't quite know how much that is going to cost us, and we would let the council know that. But we would probably need to go out for an RFP to find somebody to do that and to get a range of prices, and then to have them come and talk with the committee to see which curator or art consultant you would be most interested in. And then from there, go back to the city council so that way we can formalize a contract with that person. So that seems to be the process that we would want to go through. So I think if we can talk maybe at a future meeting as to what kind of a art curator, art consultant would be a good fit for something like this, that would be a good next step.
So Stuart, do you have ideas, or Camille or Beth, do you guys have ideas on these kind of consultants? Because that's totally out of my bailiwick. And, if you've already, Lisa's nodding yes, Camille's nodding yes. If you guys know people, wouldn't it be good to suggest it?
Well, I think first of all, we need to be putting together what we want to have. And then, I think there's a two-step process. I think since we know where we want to, I don't know, did we decide where we're going to go? And then we can just,
there was a majority of people.
Okay. And then I think that the names can be thrown out, and it's going to be a dialogue, because the names that are going to be thrown out may say, I'm not interested in this project. Right? And on the other end, on our end, I could throw emails out to people, as well as probably Beth and Lisa, to people who are saying, so I would like language so I think as a committee, we need to have language.
But an
Legally,
RFP would
We
go
also
to
have
all
to
of
open
them.
it up to the public. We also have to
Yeah.
open it up. It can't just
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, it can't go to,
I
Okay.
understand that. I'm just
Right.
talking about even before that, if you were,
And I don't know about you, Camille, or anyone else, but I've already sent the city 2 contacts of public art curators that I researched through friends of mine who do public art, and they said these 2 people were really good. They're very different, but that was done months ago. But I'm sure other people have other people, and we might just have a big pool of people that we put this out to. But
I think
go ahead.
legally, I think we have to put it as an RFP, and then we can invite those people to apply. But I think
Right.
it has to go out, then we do all the interviews of all the people that have applied, or we assess and then interview for,
absolutely.
We would also
Absolutely.
put it out on the California listserv for
So,
potential people as well. So not just people that we know, but other people who we may not know would be able to apply.
so I guess, Stuart, my other thing would to be asked, is it possible for us to get the narrower framework of what that RFP would look like, and then we can, as a committee, implement other ideas to expand the way that the RFP looks?
Sure.
Does that, in terms of next steps?
Yes.
yeah, I think that's what we would do maybe in March, right, Stuart?
Right.
That would
So I
be
think
kind
the
of
next meeting we
step
wanted to
is
start
kind of
talking about.
creating that.
Yeah.
Do you think that the master plan one will take, should we do 2 meetings in a row for that? Or are we talking about alternating between these 2, master plan and then the
I think if we alternate between the 2, because I think if we start talking about the master plan for the Baylands, I think we're going to ultimately end up similar,
Mhm. Okay.
but bigger than this. I think if we have the same basic conversation about the Baylands, about values, and about who we're trying to deal with, who we're trying to talk about, what kinds of elements of art, we then can, and I think that'll be a broad array. And then becomes the question of, do we have multiple consultants for the Baylands? Do we have a single master consultant for the Baylands? I think those are the kinds of conversations that we can have at the next meeting. And then if we come back and talk about the area behind the park, gives us a little bit more of a little bit experience on how to have that conversation about the next one for going out and finding something else for the Baylands. I think if we do it iteratively, it might make some more sense for the committee to work through that way.
Am I mistaken? I have us down for another committee meeting week after next.
Yes,
The
and we were going to
15th.
start talking about the Baylands
All right,
master plan.
thank you.
So at the previous meeting, we forwarded to the committee a number of different master plans that are out there. And so the idea at the next committee was to start talking about trying to create a master plan for the Baylands. And so looking through those kinds of master plans, seeing what elements of those master plans you like, seeing which cities that you may have said, oh, this is a really good master plan. So that way we can start contacting those cities to see who helped them. And I know in a number of the master plans, they told us who helped them. And then I know we forwarded an article, I think, from the University of Kentucky talking about public art master plans to give a more theoretical perspective. So it's more, next time is to have more of a general conversation about how do we want to develop a master plan for the Baylands. This one is very specific about, okay, let's talk about specific areas where we can, have an impact today. The next meeting we want to talk, because we want to, the specific plan for the Baylands is supposed to be coming to the city sometime in the springtime. And we don't want to get so far behind where the specific plan happens and starts going through the approval process without the public art piece being thought about. So we want to make sure that that is moving along at its own track. So that's why we wanted to have 2 meetings in February, one to talk about specific art in town, and one to start talking about the Baylands. And
So
we'll
what-
probably do something similar in March.
So what I'll do is I'll send you guys the web link from our December 7th meeting that was canceled, that had all of the other master plans from all the other places that Stuart had provided us. You guys can start reading that. And then of course that'll be reposted before next week's meeting, but you can start reading through it now because it's quite a bit of stuff to kind of look through and see what, it catches your eye or what's interesting. Okay. And then we'll start, and then the next meeting, I guess we'll also talk about maybe booking 2 meetings in March.
Mhm.
And I did not receive any public comments, and let me double check. I do not have any text messages either, and we don't have anybody from the public at the meeting, so I think we can conclude at 5:55. Oh, yes, Beth.
Yeah.
When is the next meeting? I couldn't follow all that.
Sorry, it's February 15th at 4:30.
Oh, so we are going to meet anyways in 2 weeks.
2
And then,
weeks.
all right.
And
is
then
it-
we'll try to do 2 weeks again in, or 2 dates again in probably March, just to keep
Okay,
moving
so we do
forward.
the 15th. Okay, all right.
But we'll
thanks.
keep them always at the 4:30, and potentially these Tuesdays are working for most people. So we'll see if that continues. I know there's always sometimes travel, but there's some movement we can do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
great
good
night,
evening.
everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.